Good morning, sir.
Very good morning.
Sir, can you please make us all the attendees because someone is kicking us out?
Hello.
Sir, can you please make all of us the attendees because someone is kicking us out?
Okay, I will wait. Yes.
Good morning, sir.
Very good morning. So we will be discussing in this lecture, that is, or in forthcoming lecture, on fuel chemistry and about myself. If you have not attended any of my class earlier, then I'm S.S. Narvi and I'm teaching here for the last 33 years. And I did my MSc and PhD from University of Roorkee, which is now IIT Roorkee. And my research interest is the metal organic framework and organic and inorganic hybrid materials. And I have published more than 75 papers till date. So this is all about me. And in this uh, in this lecture or in this chapter or in this unit, you can say, we'll be mainly discussing with uh, the the chemical fuels or fossil fuels such as coal, petroleum, and natural gas, isn't it? And also other gases which are synthetic gases as well. So the nuclear fuel will not be discussed here because nuclear fuel makes the part of the syllabus in physics. So that will not be taken up here. So whenever we say fuel, we mean chemical fuel. And therefore, we will upload the slide. I will upload the slide, and after each two lectures, I will put part of that lecture into your the file section, upload as a file, so you can uh, study from there. But see, it is very, it's not very conducive for me um, to teach online because we are basically a teacher, and unless we use the whiteboard or blackboard, isn't it? And see the faces of my student, I'm, I'm not generally or very much satisfied because it's the reaction which comes from from your faces by which a teacher judges or takes the feedback of its own teaching. It is the faces of the student which gives us the feedback about about our teaching. So it's very bad luck that the entire semester has gone in this way, and hopefully in near future I don't find that till the final examination of the second semester you may be able to reach the institute. So uh, hope that everybody will be all right, including me, and at least in the second semester you will be able to, second year you will be able to reach to the campus. Uh, in the last few years, especially in those the lockdown period, the campus has gone a very positive changes have taken place as far as the infrastructure is concerned, and uh, really the director of this institute, which is presently here, this he has taken all pain to convert the entire campus into a beautiful place where you can have the feeling of a good institute, because the present director is a teacher, is a friend of ours, isn't it? He is a teacher here itself, so he knows that how to do the things, and he knows the nature of the people as well as the nature of the difficulties which come in the way. So he has taken good care, and now the campus is good looking, and when we come, inshallah, the next year, we will find that it is a good place of learning, and we are also continuously revising our syllabi. The labs are still getting better and better, isn't it? So, with this note, I would like to start the syllabus. Now, I would like to upload this on the screen. So, I'm sure that you are listening. I'm sure you are. I'm audible.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. So, one more thing I would like to tell you, that if you don't understand certain things, then you please come out, isn't it? I will leave the session after 45-50 minutes. Then in 5 minutes time you can ask your difficulties, or even in between, I don't mind, isn't it? If you speak in between and ask some question, I will be rather thankful to you that you are trying to understand the things. Now the topic is chemistry of fuels and combustion. So fuel, as it is defined in the English dictionary, are the substances that produce useful energy when they undergo chemical or nuclear reaction. Chemical or nuclear reaction. Fuels such as coal, wood, oil, or that is petroleum, and the natural gas provide energy when they are burnt. Compounds in the body. So these chemicals, which are chemical fuel, which are mainly the fossil fuel, coal, wood, isn't it? wood is not fossil, but coal and the petroleum and the natural gas, they are fossil fuel. What are the fossil fuel? Will come into the next slide, and they undergo combustion reaction, because these, you see, these chemical fuel, they store energy in themselves in the form of a chemical bond. And how they store energy? They store energy from the sun, isn't it? In the by the process of photosynthesis and respiration. So they generate molecules, isn't it? Within that, you know that what is the role of photosynthesis and respiration. So the energy is stored in the form of a chemical bond. And now when these chemicals, they are put to combustion, they are put to combustion in presence of good amount of oxygen, they undergo combustion reaction, and they produce the material or the substances which are highly stable in nature. And therefore this excess energy which they have stored in the form of chemical bond, it is converted into heat, and a part of it as light. So mainly the energy is coming from sun, which is stored in the form of chemical bond in chemical fuels, and which upon combustion gives you a large amount of heat which can be utilized for doing purposeful work. So main sources of fossil fuel or chemical fuel is coal, wood, the petroleum, and the natural gas which provides energy when they are burned or they undergo combustion process. Similarly, compounds in the body such as glucose, they are broken down into simple compounds and provide energy inside inside the mitochondria, which is known as the powerhouse of the cell, where the glucose is burned down into simpler compounds, carbon dioxide and water, isn't it? And they provide energy for metabolic processes. So similarly, some of the radioactive substances such as plutonium, uranium provide energy when they undergo nuclear fission reaction, or lighter nuclei when they undergo fusion reaction. So these are type of the material which provide energy. So since we have only in your course is only chemical fuel, so chemical fuel is, as I've told you, they are also known as fossil fuel, because they are they the material they obtain, they take energy from sun in the form of photosynthesis respiration, and when they are buried due to certain activities, the natural activities, they are buried into the earth, they are getting converted into coal or petroleum and natural gas. So that is why they are known as fossil fuels, because they are buried in the earth for millions of years, and then they have come out, they were taken out, and they are used as coal or petroleum or natural gas. So chemical fuel is any compound that has stored energy. This energy is captured in the form of chemical bond through processes such as photosynthesis and respiration. This I have already told you. Energy is released during oxidation. The most common form of oxidation is the direct reaction of fuel with oxygen through combustion process. But gasoline is not gasoline. In fact, it is petroleum and coal. Gasoline is not a natural fuel. So gasoline, instead of gasoline, you put petroleum. Petroleum. Wood, petroleum, and coal. These are the uh, and any number of other fuels have energy-rich chemical bonds created using the energy from sun. So which is released when the fuel is burnt. Chemical fuels or fossil fuels are useful reserve of fuel and are therefore used extensively to satisfy the demands of energy-dependent civilization. So this I have already told you. So now coming over to the next slide. You see, all combustible substances are not fuel, isn't it? But all fuels are combustible substance, isn't it? Combustion reaction, when is that where when the compounds or material they are burned in presence of oxygen to produce energy, isn't it? That is combustion process. And so all the combustible substances are not a fuel, but the all the fuels are combustible in nature. So this is the statement which can be justified in this. Suppose you have graphite or diamond, isn't it? Graphite is also combustible in nature, isn't it? Diamond is also combustible in nature. Its ignition temperature may be slightly higher, but when it undergoes combustion reaction, it will release energy, and that energy can be utilized. But you see, anything which is combustible, I have told you, is not a fuel. The reason is that who would like to prepare a cup of coffee by burning a piece of diamond or even some amount of graphite, which has another use? Graphite are the material which can be better utilized elsewhere, isn't it? In the form of electrode, in the form of lubricating material, etc. So it has another good use as compared to fuel, that graphite. So therefore the graphite and diamond, though they are combustible, but they are not fuel, because the reason is that anything which is not economical is not a fuel. Therefore, fuel can be defined as any combustible substance which upon proper ignition, isn't it? The term is proper ignition. What does it mean? Proper ignition means that when it is burnt in presence of good amount of air or oxygen, then only the ignition will be proper, and the final product of combustion will be achieved. For example, if you have insufficient of oxygen, then carbon may burn to give you carbon monoxide, which is a harmful gas. At the same time, good amount of energy will not be released, because if oxygen would have been more or sufficient, then carbon will be burned to give you the final product, that is carbon dioxide. So therefore, that is proper ignition. Hello. Therefore, the proper ignition terms gives you a large amount. Therefore, you can, again, I would like to conclude the definition of a fuel. Therefore, fuel can be defined as any combustible substance which upon proper ignition gives large amount of energy which can be utilized economically for doing purposeful work. So these terms, proper burning and or a proper ignition and economical, is a very important term in defining the fuel. So anything which is combustible but which is not economically viable as a fuel cannot be termed as a fuel. For example, suppose I'm I'm sitting before a table, isn't it, which I have purchased for say 5,000, isn't it? If you burn this table, how much energy you will get? Very less. So that is why anything which is in use, which has better use than, than as a fuel, isn't it? Cannot be taken as a fuel, cannot be termed as a fuel. And therefore, anything which is not economical, though it may be combustible, but it will not be termed as a fuel. What happens when fuel is ignited or burnt? You see, fuel molecule have three types of component. One is carbon and hydrogen, which is a major component of any fuel, whether it is a liquid fuel or a solid fuel, isn't it? Wood or coal, or it is natural gas. The main component or major component is carbon and hydrogen. Nitrogen, sulfur, and oxygen, they are minor components of a fuel. Then, along with that, there is a rare component, such as metal oxides, isn't it? There may be some silica trapped in, isn't it? So all those materials are rare components. The chief component or major component is carbon and hydrogen. Sulfur and nitrogen also, they are the minor components, and they also release energy when they are put under combustion. But mainly, the main component is carbon and hydrogen. So in the fuel molecule, energy is trapped. Energy is trapped in the form of chemical bond, isn't it? Having carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen, sulfur, oxygen, and certain other things such as rare compounds. When it undergoes combustion reaction in presence of good amount of oxygen, the chief product, major product will be carbon dioxide and water molecule. You know that here the fuel molecule have a huge amount of stored energy in the form of a chemical bond. But here the product of combustion is carbon dioxide and water molecule. Both of them are highly stable product, isn't it? And therefore they have lowest energy content from the material which was having highest energy content or high energy content gets converted into a lowest energy content material. So this excess energy or the change of energy from highest energy content to the lowest energy content, isn't it? And therefore the remaining amount of energy comes out as a heat energy, and very small part of it comes out as a light energy. So this is how the combustion reaction takes place. From a high energy content, we are getting the lowest energy content in the form of carbon dioxide and water molecule. Fossil fuels are principally, that is, I have told you why we call it fossil fuel, because they are obtained by mining, because year ago they have been buried inside the earth, where depending upon the nature of the environment there, they got converted into either coal, lignite, peat, isn't it? Or they are converted into petroleum or natural gas. So that is why they call it fossilized fossil fuel, are principally hydrocarbons. They are hydrocarbon, mainly the compounds of carbon and hydrogen, isn't it? Carbon and hydrogen, with a small amount of the nitrogen compound and sulfur compounds may also be there. So principally, the fossil fuel are hydrocarbon with minor impurities, isn't it? They are also so named because they originate from the decayed and fossilized remains of the plants and animals that lived millions years ago. So this I have told you already. Now, you see, try to get the energetics or the bond breaking and bond formation, and from there you can assess that what is the amount of energy liberated when coal is burnt. I've taken example of coal because in other cases, pure hydrocarbon, you can get the energy of the chemical bond and directly you can calculate an exact value you will get. But here in coal, because coal is not there in the purified form, so coal is mainly carbon, water molecule trapped, then some hydrogen and oxygen. There may be also some compounds of nitrogen and sulfur as well, isn't it? There are many different kinds of coal in addition to carbon and hydrogen. Carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Coal also contains a small amount of nitrogen, sulfur, and some other elements, minerals. So, if you consider this, you try to get that we are going to calculate that how much energy will be evolved when we burn a known amount of carbon, known amount of coal. When we burn not carbon, coal. Hello. So a known amount of coal when we burn, then how much energy will be liberated? We know that in case of coal, coal is mainly carbon, isn't it? Mainly carbon. But it is not 100% carbon-carbon single bond, isn't it? There may be carbon-carbon double bond, there may be carbon-hydrogen bond, there may be carbon-nitrogen bond, isn't it? In the small amount, there may be carbon-sulfur bond in the small amount, there may be the polycyclic structure, there may be benzene type of structure, fused ring structure, so many things are there. But mainly, majority of this is in the form of, if you assume that it is carbon-carbon single bond, isn't it? With the highest energy thing, isn't it? Then you will find that, and if you burn that, what is the product of combustion? Carbon dioxide is the product of combustion. So if you try to evaluate this energy change, now what is the reaction? Suppose 1 mole of carbon, that is 12 gram, is burnt. It reacts with 1 mole of oxygen to give you 1 mole of carbon dioxide. Now, suppose all carbon, it is in the form of carbon-carbon single bond. And yes, naturally, oxygen is in the form of oxygen. Are not including the impurities, we are not including the carbon-hydrogen bond, we are not including the polycyclic structures or benzene type of structure or aromatic structure. Only we are considering that entire 12 gram of carbon is present in the form of carbon-carbon or one more form of carbon-carbon single bond. If you do that during the reaction what happens? That old bonds are broken and new bonds are formed. For breaking the bond, energy will be consumed. By the formation of bond, the energy will be evolved. So how much energy will be consumed? We'll calculate first. You know that one carbon-carbon single bond requires how much energy? 83 kilocalories per mole. For breaking one, that is carbon oxygen double bond, the energy required is 119 kilocalories per mole. So for breaking these two bonds, carbon-carbon single bond and oxygen double bond, how much energy is required? 202 kilocalories per mole will be consumed in the process. Will be consumed in the process. And two bonds are formed in one molecule of carbon dioxide. There is a two carbon-oxygen double bond. So the energy released by one carbon-oxygen double bond is 177 kilocalories per mole. Since there are two carbon oxygen double bond in carbon dioxide, so you will be getting 2 into 177, that is 354 kilocalories energy per mole. So energy consumed is 202, energy released is 354 kilocalories per mole. So net energy release will be 152 kilocalories per mole of carbon. That is from uh, 12, 12 gram of carbon, this much energy will be released. Now, depending upon impurities, other types of bond that I have discussed, carbon hydrogen, carbon carbon single bond, carbon carbon double bond, carbon 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 nitrogen bond, carbon sulfur bond, and in the coal, isn't it? There are impurities such as silica is there, many other impurities, even the water is there, moisture is also there. So therefore, when you burnt 1 kg of coal, Indian coal, isn't it? Then this is for anthracite, but if you do this, then about 4,000 to 5,000 kilocalories of energy is produced in the process. This much. In Indian coal, our Indian coal, isn't it? In the as they are obtained from the mine, isn't it? They will also depend upon the nature, isn't it? Various types of coals are there, and therefore this is about the bituminous coal. The uh, mostly obtained mined coal is bituminous coal, isn't it? So bituminous coal releases near about 4,000 to 5,000 kilocalories of energy per kg of the coal. So from here you can understand that how much energy we can get from the coal. Now this was about this is about the energetics or energy which we obtain from 1 kg of coal, isn't it? But still you can find that other types of fuel as well, such as petroleum. One of the most important fossil fuel is petroleum, where you know that fossil fuel, because petroleum is highest use energy material. About 40% of the energy requirement of the mankind is fulfilled by petroleum. About 40%. About 40% of the total energy need of the mankind is provided by petroleum. So that is why it is most important fuel. Now, the first and important one is petroleum. Generally, it has a mixture of the light and heavy hydrocarbon, but in general, the simple hydrocarbon or simple hydrocarbon molecules are there, where the carbon have which has the molecules which have 6 to 12 carbon atom, but also contains some light hydrocarbon and some heavy, the long chain hydrocarbon. See, when you mine the petroleum, that is crude oil, it has the from C1 to C4, they are in the form of gases. From C1, carbon contain the molecule having one carbon to four carbon, they are there in the form of gas, and they are part, and that is why they are known as natural gas. They are present in the top layer of the petroleum reserves. Then from 5 onward to up to 12 or 18, you are getting in the form of the liquid fuel, or up to 26, up to 26 carbon atom you are getting in the form of liquid fuel, isn't it? But also it is a mix of certain large molecular weight hydrocarbon, that is from C26 to C35 or 37 carbon number, the molecule having more than 26 carbon up to 37 carbon atoms. They may be polycyclic, they may be straight chain hydrocarbon, they may be the branch chain hydrocarbon, isn't it? They may be aromatics, isn't it? Or they may be alicyclic compounds. Alicyclic, such as the cyclohexane, cyclopentane, isn't it? So both the aromatics and alicyclic compounds may be there. The long chain, higher molecular weight components, the middle range hydrocarbon, molecular weight hydrocarbon, and then the small weight, small chain or the small molecule which having carbon C1 to C4, which comes in the form of which comes in the form of natural gas. So all types of hydrocarbons are there. The petroleum is highly used in the modern, that is, in the whether the rich countries, United States, it forms petroleum used to produce fuel for automobile, and it is the most consumed fuel in the entire Europe and the United States. Still, it is having that because electric motors are now coming up, isn't it? So we will discuss that later on. So this is how the uh, scenario of hydrocarbon. Whatever hydrocarbon we get, that is the hydrocarbon or petroleum fulfills our 39 to 40% of our need is fulfilled by petroleum. Out of that total petroleum, what we get, we are using 40% in the form of gasoline. Out of total petroleum, isn't it? Out of total petroleum, isn't it? Petroleum fulfills our 40% need of the humankind. But out of the total petroleum, what we require is 40% is in the form of gasoline, which you call petrol, isn't it? Or which is being filled into in your motorbike, isn't it? And the gasoline engine, isn't it? That 40% of that is needed. Out of the total petroleum, we need 40% of petroleum in the form of gasoline, isn't it? 27% in the form of fuel oil or diesel. This is also known as diesel oil. Diesel oil. Then only 7 to 8% we need in the form of kerosene or jet fuel. And 10% of the total, which is generally the high molecular weight components, isn't it? More than 22 carbon atom. They are being used for thousands of petrochemical used in our daily life, such as many things. Then in your food compounds as an additive, they are used as pharmaceuticals, they are also used as cosmetic material. And the polymer, most important is polymer, that is petrochemical precursors or polymers, isn't it? Petrochemical. So the polymer, the petrochemicals, remaining of the petrochemicals, and food compounds, pharmaceutical and cosmetics, all they require only 10% of the total petroleum which we obtain, isn't it? 40% in the form of gasoline, 27% to 28% in the form of fuel oil, 7 to 8% in the form of jet fuel, and 10% for pharmaceutical industry, for other petrochemical industry, for polymer formation, for polymers, and for cosmetics. So only 10% is required. Now another important fuel is coal, which we obtain by mining, isn't it? So coal also originates from the decayed vegetative material buried millions years ago, but the process is slightly different, and therefore you are getting the uh, the coal. I'll show you in the slide. The structure of the coal is such that it's not only purely carbon-carbon, isn't it? Carbon-carbon is there, but some amount of other things are there. But carbon-carbon single bond is not there, isn't it? Not there in the majority. That is about 50% we have carbon-carbon single bond. But others bonds such as polycyclic structure and other things are also there. So it also has some original lignin-like structure which was there in the plant itself, exhibiting many fused rings, and large fraction of aromatic compounds are also there in the coal. Consequently, coal is more of a polymeric substance than petroleum. Petroleum is not that much polymeric, isn't it? Only the higher molecular weight components of the petroleum are polymeric in nature, where few things are there, isn't it? But with that cannot be taken as a polymeric. But uh, so therefore, consequently, coal is more of polymeric substances than petroleum, and is found as a solid and not as a liquid. The carbon to hydrogen ratio in coal is 1:1, isn't it? 1:1. For every 12 carbon, there is 12 carbon atom or 12 gram of carbon atom, there may be 1 gram of hydrogen. So this is how the coal is there. But in case of petroleum, this ratio increases up to 1:2 or 1:3 in case of petroleum. But in case of natural gas, it goes up to 1 is to 3.5 or 1 is to 4, because natural gas mainly it is methane with a small amount of ethane and propane and a very small amount of butane, and therefore the ratio of carbon to hydrogen increases there, which is very close to 1 is to 4, because mainly then in natural gas, the main component is methane. That is why carbon to hydrogen ratio is 1 is to 4, close to 1 is to 4. This same thing I have told you earlier, that natural gas, isn't it? This is a generic term for light hydrocarbon fractions. I have told you, found associated with most oil deposits. Natural gas is mostly methane with small quantities of ethane and other gases mixed in, that is propane and butane, not above that. It is hydrogen rich since methane has a carbon to hydrogen ratio of 1 is to 4, approximately very close to 1.1 is to 4, because some ethane is also there, isn't it? Where the ratio is 2 is to 6, that is 1 is to 3. Similarly, a small amount of propane is also there, isn't it? So that is why, but since methane is about 92 to 93% in natural gas, therefore the ratio is very close to 1 is to 4. It is also an excellent fuel burning with a high heat output and little in the way of unwanted pollution, that is the carbon content, carbon emission will be lower, and because 4 hydrogens are there, so they will produce good amount of water as well, which is not a danger to the environment. But still the carbon dioxide is produced, it may be in the little amount as compared to petroleum. So still maybe lower amount, but carbon dioxide will be produced, and we know that carbon dioxide leads to greenhouse effect. It's a greenhouse gas, but all organic compounds in that way they generate the carbon dioxide on combustion. So natural gas is also the advantage of natural gas is that it can be easily transported, and one thing, and the first thing is that they bring about low carbon dioxide emission, low carbon emission as compared to other hydrocarbon. So they have one advantage is this. Another advantage is this, that they can be easily transported through pressurized pipelines. So that is another advantage of the natural gas. Now natural gas, they are also, the third advantage is that they are, can also be considered as the renewable source of energy, because the methanogenic bacteria, they are always there in their garbage dumps, isn't it? Where they will convert the garbage slowly into methane, isn't it? Garbage into methane, and and also the methane is obtained in the rice field. So yeah, you can see that because methanogenic bacteria, they convert the garbage into methane, isn't it? So you can say, in a way, you can say that the natural gas is also a renewable source of energy. So that is the third advantage. Now, whatever fuel you take, natural, the fossil fuel, but mostly all of them will bring about will bring about the carbon emission, which is a serious threat to the environment, because it is uh, the greenhouse gas. So it will bring about the it will bring about the uh, the uh, the global warming, etc. Isn't it? Now that therefore the people are trying to use hydrogen as a fuel, because hydrogen upon combustion gives you the natural thing, that is water molecule, and it is not. It is also slightly um, that is it's also water molecule. They are also uh, um, a greenhouse gas, greenhouse molecule, but still that the region of absorbance of the water molecule in the spectrum is very small as compared to carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide in the larger area, that is why hydrogen can be considered as a good fuel. But the disadvantage of the hydrogen is that hydrogen is mainly obtained as such as on today by as the byproduct as the byproduct of the refineries, petroleum refineries, as the byproduct of the petroleum refinery. So again, if, if we are dependent upon refineries for production of hydrogen, so that is one disadvantage. Another thing is that associated with the burning of hydrogen. If you combine directly, you oxidize in presence of oxygen, hydrogen, huge amount of energy will be released. Just 1 minute. I'll come back within 1 or 2 minutes. Please wait. So there is a difficulty. There is a difficulty in burning hydrogen directly in presence of oxygen, and because then a, a huge amount of energy will be released, isn't it? And it may explode. One such the mishappening occurred in the Hindenburg, which is known as Hindenburg disaster, where an airship which was filled with the oxygen, isn't it, had got explosively burnt, and it was the impact of that explosion was that so much that the entire ship has been broken into pieces. So that is why it is very it's not a very good alternative where you can directly use hydrogen into automobile or like this, isn't it? uh, for for getting energy. So therefore, but now the scientists they have keep on trying. That is their uh, the job or their religion, that they keep on trying and they don't uh, bow down, isn't it? And that is their the religion of scientists is to keep on doing things, isn't it? So what they have done, instead of providing or combustion, combusting the or burning the hydrogen directly with the oxygen, isn't it? They have found out a via the another route, that they are trying to use hydrogen and oxygen in a fuel cell, where fuel cell where the different electrodes, oxygen and hydrogen will be combining to give you water molecule, isn't it? At different electrodes, and electricity will be generated. And the electricity will be generated. Now this electricity will be utilized for running the motor, for electric motor, isn't it? In everywhere you can do that, whether it is. So NASA was doing this for a very long time, where they are using hydrogen and oxygen as a fuel in the form of fuel cell, isn't it? And they produce electricity from this fuel cell, and then they generate water, isn't it? As a product of combustion, and this water was used for drinking purposes by the astronauts, isn't it? Or the crew member for providing fresh or drinking water. So instead of using or burning hydrogen directly, which may lead to explosion, but still you can use hydrogen and oxygen in the form of fuel cell, where you can generate electricity, and this electricity can be used to run the motor. So this is another way out. Now another, now still people are trying to split water. What they are trying to do? They are trying to take energy, absorb energy from the sunlight through the solar panel, isn't it? And split water, itself into hydrogen and oxygen. You electrolyze water so that you get hydrogen and oxygen, isn't it? The water is splits to give you hydrogen and oxygen. Now this hydrogen and oxygen used in the fuel cell to regenerate water and produce energy. So in a way, by this cyclic setup, you are absorbing, you are taking heat from the sun, and then you are converting it into the the electricity, isn't it, directly, and therefore you can take energy from the sunlight to split water, then you to get hydrogen and oxygen, then hydrogen and oxygen they recombine in the fuel cell, re-react in the fuel cell to produce water and energy. So that is the cyclic thing which people are still trying, isn't it? And very, I think in near future you may get this technology. Then people are also using methanol in the fuel cell so as to convert, because methanol methanol is a material which is renewable. You get from garbage dump, you can convert any material into methanol, isn't it? Many material you can convert it into methanol. Any organic matter you can convert it into methanol. So methanol is a renewable source of energy. So people are trying to use methanol instead of other things in the fuel cell. So our future fuel is, of course, hydrogen or water, which we will get by splitting water, hydrogen and oxygen. At the same time, another important material will be methanol. This is the same slide which I have told you earlier, that the total energy resources or requirement of the energy, which is we have the data for 2010, the total energy what we need, 39 to 40% is fulfilled. The energy need of the mankind is fulfilled by petroleum, 24% by natural gas, about 24 to 25% by coal, then 7 to 8% from hydroelectric energy, isn't it? And here about 6%, 5% to 6% in the form of nuclear fuel. But daily, now more and more nuclear nuclear power plants are being put up, and therefore this percentage is increasing day by day, and the petroleum is decreasing day by day, not only by the nuclear process, but also by the hydrogen technology, water splitting technology, isn't it? Even you can say that electricity is produced and the vehicles are being run from by the electric engine rather than the petroleum engine, but still the electricity which is produced is mainly produced by the petroleum and by coal. Most of the energy, the electricity generating plants are either the coal. Now the nuclear fuel is coming up, and then you have the petroleum and natural gas fed electric plants the power plants are also there. So the dependence is almost same. It will not change unless you keep on increasing the more and more nuclear plants. And one more thing, there's a myth that if you increase the nuclear plant, the chances of disaster will be there, or the radiation chances will increase. I would like to tell you that even when you are burning coal, isn't it? Burning coal. In the coal there are isotopes which produce radiation, isn't it? Which produce radiation. And they are going unchecked. But if you are using nuclear plant and you put a proper check and provide the safety parameters, if you are fulfilling the radiation which is coming out from the nuclear plant will be much less as compared to coal-fed power plants. So this I have seen myself while having a course in the Bhava Atomic Research Center. They have shown that how the coal-fed plant, they are getting the radiation. We have counted it by Giger-Muller counter, and outside the nuclear power plant, you will find that the outside the plant, you will find that there is a minimum radiation as compared to coal. So it is only a myth that if you put more and more nuclear plants, isn't it? Then the chances of radiation, yes, disaster may take place, but still the if you remember that one uh, disaster which took place in Russia, isn't it? But still, in India, whatever nuclear plants are being set up from so many years, that is from they started from the time of Pandit Nehru, where then the many nuclear reactors were put on. The safety standards in Indian plants are much better as compared to Russia or China, isn't it? Safety standard in the nuclear plant in the India is much better, isn't it? I'm repeating, much better as compared to Russia or China, isn't it? So, as far as nuclear safety standards are concerned, we are very close to that is European countries or US. So safety standards in our plants are very good. So this is only a myth, and therefore, for us, it is very important for India to go to build up more and more nuclear power plants as compared to the coal fed or the petroleum or natural gas fed plant, isn't it? So this is another comment which I wanted to make. Now,
Excuse me,
टाइम हो
sir.
गया भाई? हाँ, टाइम हो गया, ठीक है. अब
Yes.
आप बताएं. कुछ पूछना है आपको?
No, sir. We have another class at 10.
Okay, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for listening me.